All right. Happy Monday, everybody. I am here with Derek Delaney from PharmD Financial Planning. So we got PharmD Financial Planning as a sponsor, Pharmacy Podcast Network, and we'll be right back after this reel so Derek can tell us about student loans. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, Derek. Thanks for joining us on this fine Monday morning. And you guys had snow this weekend.
Yeah, what was it, like 4 days ago? It was 80. We actually set a high temperature record where I think it got into the 90s. And then this morning I woke up and there was icicles on my patio furniture.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry to laugh. I was just making fun of like all my, my family back in Minnesota as well this morning.
Gotta love it. You gotta embrace it.
You do. All right, Derek, let's dive into student loans. I think this is a great topic. Pharmacists are hit heavy with student loans. We talked about this previously a few weeks back, but I think this is it. Now it comes back to forefront as the repayments are starting to happen. So I'm going to give you the floor, my man.
Yeah. So this time of year, student loans start to pop up more often in people's minds of things they have to worry about. I mean, if you go look at Google, one of the top money topics that people Google are student loans. So there is a lot of questions out there. There's a lot of uncertainty going on right now. And I thought this episode would be great if we spend a little time catching everybody up about what's going on with student loans in 2023 and what I hope happens with student loans moving forward after this year.
All right. Well, tell us about that. So like for me, it's a mess when it comes to student loans. Like it's kind of like, I think it was like when the news came out that student loan forgiveness was going to happen, but like none of mine were covered under that. So to me, it didn't even matter. Mm-hmm. But anyways, it's still type of, when you have multiple businesses and kind of entrepreneurs type of mindset, like that is a very big like question in our family is like, how much do we pay down on the student loans now or later? So keep going, buddy.
Yeah. So that is the big question for a lot of people. And I think just taking a step back, student loans are a burden on a lot of young people. There has never been a time in our society where student loans haven't been more burdensome than at any time in the past, just because they are more costly. And now that interest rates are going up, the carrying debt on these student loans are going to increase, and it's just going to be a big problem for a lot of people. And to make matters worse for borrowers currently, the student loan payment freeze is expected to end this year. And before it ends, the big talking point is, will we get any sort of mass student loan forgiveness to help ease the burden for those borrowers before those payments kick back on? And that is what a lot of people are paying attention to and are hoping to get more clarification on as we move through the spring and into the summer.
When do you think we'll have that clarification?
So the Supreme Court has to rule by, I believe, June 30th of this year. And then the law states that 60 days after their ruling is when the payment periods or when the payments will begin again. So by the end of August, in my opinion, is the latest we can wait before payments start to turn back on. But the Supreme Court can come out and they can rule ahead of time. And if that's the case, 60 days from that ruling, student loan payments will kick in again if mass forgiveness is not provided.
Okay. Before we get into mass forgiveness, can you go a little bit deeper onto the freeze and that was related to COVID and all that, right? But it's still like that's coming to an end and it's back on the table, right?
Yeah. So to simplify it, when COVID hit, government stepped in and shut a lot of stuff down and forced a lot of people into unemployment, and a lot of small businesses couldn't open their doors and operate. So in order to relieve some of the pain of not having income coming in because of what the government mandated in a lot of situations, they were kind enough to freeze student loan payments. So people who had student loans weren't burdened with having to make those payments while being out of work because of all the chaos that was going on in our economy due to COVID. And not only were they freezing payments, they were also stopping any interest on those student loans from being accrued. And then to take it one step farther, they added a nice other little caveat where if you were part of public service loan forgiveness, or you were trying to get that, each month you didn't make a payment still counted toward the 120 payments you were required to make in order to achieve public student loan forgiveness. So they were very generous in that regard for student loan borrowers at that time by creating the payment pause and eliminating the accrued interest on those student loans until the pause ends.
Okay. Pause ends, interest comes back, same interest as it was before?
You'll have to go back and check. My guess, it's probably, well, yes. If it was locked in via contract, I believe so.
Okay, good.
It's something you're going to check in on, and just to double check with your student loan carrier.
Got it. Okay. How about now getting into the mass forgiveness? Like, what does that mean? Who's included? And I don't know if it, like, what are the chances are you think that's going to happen?
So I think there's a small chance. I would put it around 5%. Okay. I never thought there was a likelihood of mass forgiveness happening for student loan borrowers. And in my opinion, I don't believe it's the appropriate next step anyway. I am not a big fan of just mass student loan forgiveness. So when I talk about mass student loan forgiveness, I mean the government coming in and telling everybody who has the right kind of loans, government direct loans, that your student loans are no longer there, where we're just going to forgive it. We're wiping the slate clean for everybody. And I don't think that that is an appropriate move that our government should make, even though I have a lot of sympathy for the borrowers who are up to their eyeballs in student loans and see no way out. So if you'd like, we can kind of dig in a little bit more on why I think that way and what I think a better option should be.
Yeah, let's do it.
So mass student loan forgiveness, in my opinion, is extremely regressive in nature. And the reason for that is student loans, when they're forgiven by the government, that debt doesn't just go away, just poof, gone. It doesn't happen that way. It gets put on the shoulders of taxpayers. So in my opinion, if you are a student loan borrower and you went out and got your college education, why should people who didn't go out and get that same college education, or undereducated people, have to take on that student debt for you? Because they don't have the education behind themselves to be able to go out and find work, theoretically, the same way somebody with education is able to do that. The other reason why it's really regressive is because the majority of student loan holders are people with advanced degrees who have the opportunity to go out and get jobs that pay high enough salaries or wages to be able to pay back those student loans. And if we give mass student loan forgiveness, it's going to help out those high income earners, the top 20% income earners, far more, because they hold far more student loans than all the other people who don't have as high of an income that are struggling a lot more. So it's regressive in that nature. And then finally, I talked about before that student loans are burdensome, but compared to other debt, student loans are some of the least burdensome type of loans available to borrowers when you consider the debt landscape. And that is because you can take advantage of things like public service loan forgiveness, where your debt is forgiven after 10 years if you work in public service. If you don't work in public service, if you have the right kind of student loans and you structure it the right way, those loans can be forgiven in 20 to 25 years. So if you come out of college and you're 22, 23 years old, by the time you're in your early 40s and your peak earning years, you could have a lot of your student loans forgiven if you do it right. And the only thing you have to worry about in that situation then is to pay the tax on whatever's forgiven. Where a lot of other type of loans don't offer the same type of outlets like student loans do right now. So mass forgiveness, because of all that, in my opinion, is not the appropriate next step, because it's regressive in nature and it's eliminating a debt that is a lot less burdensome than a lot of others people take on in their lifetime.
Okay. That makes total sense. I'm not going to argue one way or the other, even though my opinion is probably in line with yours. What about, okay, so prior to this, I'd never heard of forgiveness before. You just said something else about forgiveness later on in your early years. What does that even mean?
So if you have the right kind of, so let's start with public service loan forgiveness. If you go out and you work in public service for 10 years, you have the right kind of student loans, and you're on the right kind of loan repayment plan. Okay. After 120 payments, all your student debt gets forgiven for free or tax-free.
Got it.
So that means you could graduate with $200,000 of student loans. You get on the right income-based repayment plan, and your repayment plan doesn't require you to pay more than the interest that's accruing on those loans. your 200,000 loan balance could go up to 400,000 over the course of 10 years.
Yeah.
All of that gets forgiven tax-free. Phenomenal thing to take advantage of if you find yourself in that position. However, there's other forgiveness that's available too. So if you get on the right kind of income-based repayment plan, and that's another reason why it's a regressive in nature, because you can get on an income-based repayment plan for your student loans, and that essentially guarantees that your student loan payment will never drown you financially, because it's based off of what you're bringing in your income every single year. And if you get on that income-based repayment plan and your income doesn't go up and maybe it drops and your student loans just stick around, they stick around, after 20 or 25 years based off of whatever income-based repayment plan you decide to go on, those loans will be forgiven after the 20 or 25 year mark. And the only thing you have to worry about is paying tax on whatever amount is forgiven. And if you know that that's what you're aspiring to, you could set up a little side investment account over the next 20, 25 years and just put a little bit of money in there to prepare for that future tax bill if you want it.
Interesting. Now, I'm trying to correlate this to pharmacists and public service roles, right? So would this be something that more like if you're a pharmacist working for either the federal or state government, that this would be more of an option for you?
Or a hospital.
Or a hospital that's owned by a
Yep.
county, or okay, got it. That makes sense.
If it's a 501c3 and it's considered a nonprofit, then you'd be able to utilize public service loan forgiveness.
Okay. Well, okay, that's important to know, because now that's going to open up the doors for a lot of pharmacists then. Perfect.
Let's just say you're in residency and you have $350,000 of student loans and you want to go work in a hospital. Public service loan forgiveness is something you really should think about pursuing and making sure your ducks are in a row to be able to take advantage of it as soon as you possibly can when those student loan repayments start. Or even if the freeze continues on, making sure your ducks in a row so you can get counted toward making those payments, even though you're not required to make those payments when it comes to the 120 you need to make in order to get forgiveness through public student loan forgiveness.
Okay. That makes sense. That's valuable information. Thank you for that. Okay. Yeah, I thought of something else too, and now I forgot it.
The last thing I will say with the student freeze is it's going to end eventually. I think this year is the year they end it. I think the national emergency or whatever they called it with COVID was ended a couple weeks ago. So I think that there's no reason to continue student loan payment freezes because the COVID emergency is now gone. So if you find yourself taking advantage of that, have a plan in place and prepare your future financial self for those payments kicking on again. And if that means having to cut back in certain areas of your life, it's better to do that sooner than later and get used to that new lifestyle with those student loan payments beginning again. So that would be my biggest piece of advice for people who are going to start experiencing being forced to make those payments again, is start thinking about it now. Don't kick the can down the road.
Love it. That's wise, Derek. Wise advice. Awesome. Well, thank you. We'll be back here next Monday at 11:30-ish, right? Give or take the tech issues. So, all right, everybody, have a great day.
Thanks, you too, Sean.